on the 8th of March, you guys will be able to factor by grouping, section 7.2. This is the next step in factoring. So we're going to take what we just learned, and we're going to add on a couple more steps to that. So we are going to be able to factor out 4 terms in a different way. So all the things we did, we factored out things that were 2 terms or 3 terms. Okay, but this one we're going to do 4 terms. Now if we look here, 3a times x plus 5 minus 2 times x plus 5. Now we said that factors are 2 things that multiply together or things that divide evenly into something. Now here, 3a is multiplying with x plus 5. That would make 3a, if you were to distribute, it would. That would make 3a a factor and x plus 5 a factor. It would make these 2 things factors because 3a is multiplying with x plus 5. So they would both be factors. They're multiplying together. So by definition, they're factors. Now, x is not a factor. 5 is not a factor. The entire thing, x plus 5, is a factor. Questions on how 3a is a factor and x plus 5 is a factor? Yes, Elijah?
Why is it x plus 5? What makes that a factor?
Great question. So the entire x plus 5 is a factor and not just x or not just 5 because the entire thing's in parentheses. If it was written like this, for example, let's say 3a times x plus 5 like that, then it would just be the 3a and the x that's a factor because that's what would be multiplying together and not the 5. Does that make more sense?
Yeah.
Great question. So as it's written right now, if you were to distribute it, then they would all be factors with each other as well. Now, if we look in the next parenthesis here, we notice, is this a kind of a similar setup to how we started the problem?
Yes.
So that means we have 2 factors here as well. Can anyone tell me one of the 2 factors? Alice. X plus 5 is a factor. What's the other factor here then? Courtney? That negative 2. So we notice by color coding, between the first part and the second part, we see 2 factors in each. Is there a common factor amongst the 2 parts, the first and the second part? Yeah, x plus 5 is a common factor. Now what did we do with our common factors, our greatest common factors, just a section ago when we checked our homework a moment ago even? We pulled it out, we factored it out, we put that in the front. Okay, we found it, and we pulled it in front. So this is what we're doing. We found our common factor. X plus 5 is a common factor. 3a and 2, they have nothing in common. But the first part and the second part have x plus 5 in common. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put this x plus 5 out in front. And when we put our greatest common factor out in front, what did we put after it? We put a set of parentheses, right? And then we said, okay, what's going to fill the parentheses? You guys remember doing that?
Yes, sir.
Now, in this case, though, since x plus 5 already starts in parentheses, we're going to want to put parentheses around the x plus 5 as well. Okay? We're going to want to keep those parentheses around the x plus 5. We don't want to lose those. And now we're going to have the parentheses after, just like we did. Now, when we first started learning how to do it, and I said a moment ago, once we get more comfortable, we don't have to do that. But when we first started learning was we would take the entire first part and divide it by our GCF. So here, if I took like 3a, you don't have to write this part down, unless you want to, times the x plus 5, the entire first part here, and I divided it by our GCF x plus 5, we can actually divide the x plus 5 and the x plus 5, because that's multiplication on the top, and we can divide multiplication. And we're left with what? 3a. Yeah. And so what do we think we're going to be left with in the second part? That minus 2. So now, did we create multiplication amongst these parentheses? Yeah. So we turned subtraction, or addition, on this next problem we'll do, we turned subtraction into multiplication, meaning we successfully factored. Factoring is where you turn multiplication or addition or subtraction into multiplication. And that's exactly what we did. We turned subtraction into multiplication. And we can multiply these through and get the same exact thing as each other, which means we can guarantee we did it correctly. Don't write this part down. Okay, I'm going to show you that real quick, though. Down in this empty space to the bottom right, but I don't want you to write it there because we'll be wanting that space for other things as well. So, that first part, let's say we had the 3a and x plus 5 minus 2 times x plus 5, and we were to distribute here. Well, if I distribute this 3a, we're going to get 3ax plus 15a. If I distribute this negative 2, I'm going to get a negative 2x minus 10. And that's actually already in order. Nothing can be combined. If I were to take that second part of things, the one we finished with, x plus 5 times the quantity of 3a minus 2, and I FOIL x plus 3a, 3ax. X minus 2, x times negative 2, negative 2x. 5 times 3a plus 15a. 5 times negative 2, negative 10. Is this the same thing, just in a different order? So if we reordered it, would they be the exact same? Yeah. So either way, these are mathematically the same. So can we still check our work like we could on our last section? Where we said, hey, if we distribute back in, we get the same thing? Yeah, we totally can. And this just proved that they're still mathematically equivalent. Hey, Osbobs. And so it doesn't change anything that we did. Questions on that at all? Okay, so that last part was just to prove that they're the same.
Yes, sir.
Let's look at number 2. Number 2, we have a similar setup we might notice.
Yep.
Do we notice a common factor on the first part and the last part? A minus 3 is a common factor. So what can I do with this common factor when it actually becomes our greatest common factor? Put it in the front. And we're going to keep it in parentheses because it starts out in parentheses. Very good, Emily. And then what am I going to put after this greatest common factor? I'm going to put an empty set of parentheses. And now I need to fill it. And it's going to be that 2x plus y. Very good, very good. I heard a couple of us say that. And it's going to be kind of what's left over. It's going to be our slang we can use from our factors here. But it's actually what we get after we divide each factor by our GCF. Courtney, did you have a question? No. Okay. I hope it was a good stretch. Good. All right. Any questions that we do have on these two at all? Once again, we took addition, not subtraction sign, but addition, and turned it into multiplication. And I can show you, just like I did on the last one, that they end up being, they are mathematically equivalent. They are the same thing. Just, they look different. That's all we're doing is we're making things look different, but it's still actually the same. It's like when you take pizza, and instead of cutting it in 8 slices, you cut it in 16. Well, is it still the same pizza? Is it still the same amount of pizza? Yes. You just made it look different was all. Same thing here. We just made it look different. It's still the same problem. It just looks different now. It's a glow up, if you will. Okay.
Have you ever thought about the fact that pizza's in a box, like a square box, but it's
Yes,
circle and
but
cut into triangles?
Yeah. Isn't that messed up?
Yes.
But in the best way. So you guys know those little the little like cheese things the things they do, they put in the boxes, like making sure the cheese doesn't touch the top of the box, the little plastic things. Yeah, the little tables, right? Okay. No, it's not. But the intention is to make sure the box doesn't cave in on the cheese.
Oh no, the intention is so that you don't have to. You don't touch the next piece of pizza. Yeah, that's the intention.
You heard us for what?
Like, okay, so here's the pizza. These are sliced. I mean, there's 2 slices. You don't want to touch one and pull. You put the thing on it and you pull it.
Yeah, you never know.
Is it?
That's
But
what
I
I
used
saw.
to keep the tables in.
What? Oh, on TikTok? So it's not true. Okay, if it's on TikTok, it's not true. We can just not know. Actually, that might be another reason for it as well. I've always heard, and maybe I'm wrong about that then, I've always heard it's for like the make sure the cheese doesn't touch the top of the box and the toppings don't do it, and because then it's messy and you lose all the toppings. Maybe it's for that as well. Maybe it's just for that instead. I don't know. But how many of y'all like used them as tables and like set up multiple of them, put your pizza on top of that? Yo, I did that all the time growing up.
How many pizzas did you have that you could do that?
Well, it'd be like, you go to like a pizza party or something like that, and like I would be like, and like I would like be that kid who wanted to grab like all of them and just like put like 5 of them together and like put my piece of pizza on top of it, and I thought it was really neat. Anyway, Jaden.
Apparently those little tables account for like $5 billion worth of pizza runs.
Wow,
Just a little bunch of pieces, it like costs that much.
interesting. That's incredible.
What's your favorite, like, okay, out of Casey's? What's the other pizza? Domino's? Godfather?
Are you just asking me my favorite pizza?
No, like, I'm giving you choices.
Okay. Casey's, Godfather's, Domino's,
And Little Caesars.
Little Caesars, Pizza Hut.
Pizza Hut. Those are your 5 options.
All right. I would just, if money wasn't an option, I'd pick Casey's. Godfather's is very expensive, and I actually think it's less good than Casey's. Domino's has stepped up their game in a crazy good way. And so, like, if I'm going for, like, quantity for the amount of money I can pay, personally, I'm probably going to go Godfather's there. Or I'm probably going to go Domino's, excuse me. Little Caesars is great for a lot of quantity. So that's always cash. And the quality isn't as bad as a lot of people like to make it out to me. My friends always crapped on Little Caesars, but I actually think it's pretty good. And then their Crazy Sticks, yeah, pretty good. They also had, I don't know if they still have it, but like a pretzel crust nacho cheese pizza that was pretty good. If I'm going for a stuffed crust, pizza's the way to go, though. Their stuffed crust is bomb. Yes.
It's so good.
Cops, like police? Or Tops?
PPS.
COPPS? Interesting. I haven't tried it. Out by Dick's Sporting Goods.
They deliver all the way to Hill.
Really?
They deliver the
I think I tried it
too.
All right. I'm going to have to try that. All right. Good to know. Good to know.
You were right. It's used to prevent the
What now, TikTok? Anyway, okay. All right. We're going to look below this in a second. Now, when there are 4 terms, we're going to put them in groups of 2. So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4 terms right below us at the bottom of this section. Bottom of this slide, I should say. We put them in 2 groups of 2. There's going to be 2 groups of 2. First 2, last 2. There's parentheses around both. Now, I'm actually going to make a slight change to this. In that second group of 2, I want us to include the sign with that second parenthesis. Now, the reason why, we'll see later, is that we make sure we have the correct signs there. We'll see that on a future problem as to how that benefits us. But we also need to know it's still technically addition between these. We didn't create multiplication because right now it looks like these parentheses being right next to each other are multiplying. They're not multiplying though. That doesn't change that. Okay? I just want us to remember that this 8b is a positive 8b. And when we have negatives here, that we make sure they're negative.
What if it was subtract?
Yep. Then we put this here so we can remember it's a negative. Or you can say it's a plus a negative. Now, when you put the first 2 and last 2 together, we look for a GCF in each parentheses. So this first parenthesis, 4ab plus 3a. What's our GCF there? A. Pull that out in front. You're left with 4b plus 3. 8b plus 6, the second parenthesis. What's our GCF? 2. Pull the 2 out. You're left with 4b plus 3. Hey, look. Does this step here, the second to last step, look pretty familiar to where we started on our first 2 examples today? Yeah, it does. How neat is that? Where the 4b plus 3 and 4b plus 3 are common factors. So look what happens. You pull that out in front inside the parentheses. You make your other parenthesis, and you put in what's left. A plus 2. Because mathematically, when you divide, that's what we're left with. And so we turned this original addition between 4 different terms into subtraction. We gave that thing a glow up. All right. Questions on how that process works? Okay. So this part up here was to kind of take one extra step onto our GCF thing. Now this one puts another extra step on that. Now we're going to practice that extra step. Example 1, we actually need to flip something around, and it's my apologies on that. So we're going to need to flip these first 2 around. So write negative 3ab plus 15a, and then the minus 4b plus 20 stays the same. My apologies on that, dudes and dudettes. Alrighty. Now, that actually just puts it in standard form, doesn't it? It wasn't in standard form before. We're actually going to reorganize it so it's in standard form. That's going to make our life easier here. Now, there's 4 terms. What did the previous page tell us to do in the first step? Put it in parentheses, put it into 2 different groups. Put the first 2 together and the last 2 together. And I said, hey, let's take that sign with the third term. So that way we make sure we remember it's a negative. Now, in our head, we still need to remember these parentheses aren't multiplying yet. We're trying to create multiplication. We're not there yet. Now, inside each parenthesis, we want to look for a GCF. Negative 3ab plus 15a. Negative 3a. We don't want the first term to be negative. So it's going to be a negative 3a. And what's going to be left inside that parenthesis?
B plus 15.
B, not plus, minus 5. B minus 5. We take out a negative 3a of the first parenthesis. We're just left with a positive b. A positive would then become a negative when divided by a negative. And 15 divided by 3 is 5. A divided by a is no a's. Now we do the same thing in that second parenthesis here. Anybody look confused? A little bit. Does it make sense why we group these? Okay? Does it make sense how we got negative 3a? Does it make sense how we got b? Does it make sense how we got minus 5? Okay. Take a breath. We're good. Okay. So, now we're going to do the same thing in the second one. So it's kind of like we're repeating our problems from yesterday multiple times. Negative 4b plus 20. What's our GCF in this parenthesis? Negative 4. Yes, Jaden.
So, I know we wrote no problem. So, like, ultimately, couldn't you just put, like, you just forget the entire, like, thing in the second part and just copy and paste it from the first part to the second part? Like, yeah, you find the greatest common factor, then you just
Okay.
paste it over there.
Okay. I'll get to what you're saying in a second, and correct me if I. Let me know if I don't actually say what you're saying. Okay, in a moment. So, our GCF was a negative 4. What are we left with in this parenthesis? B minus 5. Now, Jaden's noticing. Hey, that's the same thing in the parentheses. So, isn't that always going to happen where we have the same thing in the parentheses? So, couldn't we just like write it again and just make sure we put whatever the GCF was out in front? Is that what you're saying, Jaden?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So, here's the thing. In order for it to work at this step, we need these parentheses to be the same, right? Because otherwise, we can't go forward from here and pull the b minus 5 out in front. That's our last step. We can't pull the b minus 5 out in front unless it's the same. So, this step's actually kind of a check to ourselves to make sure we pull out the right thing. Because let's say we pull out a positive 4, are we going to get the exact same thing inside the parenthesis? No. Or if we pull out a 2 instead of a 4, we're not going to get the exact same thing. So, actually doing that will help us to check to make sure we did it correctly. Does that answer your question, Jaden?
Yeah.
That's an excellent question. All right, so now we're going to say, hey, those b minus 5s, those are the same. Let's pull that out in front as our new GCF. And then what's going to be left in the other set of parentheses? Very good. Negative 3a minus 4. So now, did we successfully turn this addition and subtraction into multiplication? Yeah. And if we were to FOIL it, do you want to bet what we come back up with? The exact same thing you started with. Pretty neat. Pretty neat. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Any questions on number 1? All right. Number 2. Is number 2 in standard form right now? No. Once again, let's change up the order. Okay, so those first 2 need to change orders. That's my bad. Negative 2cd plus c minus 8d plus 4. The whole thing's going to work out insanely nicer if we do that. I apologize for not having those in the right order. That's fair. All right, now, but in like a couple months, I'll be the longest math teacher you've had in a few years, right? Okay.
You already are.
Since Mr. Loafing? Well, I heard one of my other classes, the freshman, was telling me that there was a teacher, maybe Mr. Wallace, that was here until April or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
the beginning of April.
Okay.
Well, you know, we start getting Snapchat memories. You know,
That was in
anything
seventh
in that
grade.
class.
Okay. So I got another like month and a half,
Yeah.
and then I'll be like the longest teacher you've had since Mr.
During
Loafing.
IXL, literally
For math.
just like
All right.
I never did. You can like
What was that?
He like still makes YouTube videos about like.
I shot
Nuh-uh.
Amazon during that time.
Yeah.
This is something dog basically banned, like,
You two probably would have been good friends.
yeah.
All right. Hey, let's go ahead and continue talking about number 2. What's going to be our first step here? Yep, first 2 and last 2. Taking that sign with that third term. The 8D, the negative needs to stay with it. But remember, did we create multiplication yet? No, not yet. That's our goal, though. So the first 2 terms, the first parenthesis, what do we look for? Greatest common factor. What's going to be our greatest common factor between a negative 2CD and a positive C?
C.
A negative C.
Oh.
So we're going to be left with a positive 2D and a what?
Negative.
Negative 1. Questions on that first parenthesis? Well, let's do that in a different color to make sure it matches.
Where do we get the negative C from?
Great question. So we get the negative C. Because we want it to be negative. Does it make sense why it's negative?
Yeah.
Okay. So when it's a C, because do they have any numbers in common? 2 and 1? No. They don't have a D in common, but they do both have a C. So we're going to pull out the C. Does that make more sense? All right, Alice. Great question. So if we do negative 1, did we actually pull out the greatest common factor? No. And then we'll see why in a second here, because we need these parentheses to match up, right? So if we left the C in there, would this parenthesis end up having a C, the second parenthesis? No. So that's another reason why we can't. Did that answer your question? That's a good question as well.
Yeah, start.
So what's our GCF of the second parenthesis, negative 8D plus 4? Negative 4. Very good. And once again, that's kind of a check to ourselves to make sure we put the right thing outside the parentheses, the right GCF. Because if we take out a negative 4, what do we get inside the parentheses?
2D plus or minus 1.
Another 2D minus 1. Is that the same thing as the first parenthesis? Yeah. If we pulled out anything other than a negative 4, we wouldn't have gotten the right thing. So if we pulled out a negative 2, or a negative 1, or a positive 1, or a positive 2, or a positive 4, they wouldn't be the exact same. So there's kind of like different checks and balances here to make sure that we're doing the right thing as we keep going.
Like the U.S. government.
Like the U.S. government. Boom! Cross-curriculum. All right. Anyone know what I mean by when I say cross-curriculum?
It crosses so you're
Like the
Blending all
history
subjects.
comes into
Yeah, we're blending subjects together. Boom! All right. How cool is that? Now the 2D minus 1, is that the same thing each parenthesis?
yes,
What can we do with that?
make it together.
Put it out in front, right? Pull that out in front as our GCF. And then what goes after the 2D minus 1 in parentheses?
Negative C minus 4.
Negative C minus 4 in its own parentheses. So now did we create multiplication?
Yep.
Yeah.
This is how fast my heart goes.
Now, I've been underlining what's inside the parentheses in the second to last step. Do you have to underline it? No.
No.
If it helps you visually to do that, keep doing that by all means.
I have a question.
That makes
Okay.
me a visual learner.
Can you,
Oh, yes. Sorry.
okay, so on this next one, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Can we? Oh wait, never mind. I messed up. I looked at them wrong.
Okay. Anyone have any questions on the first 2? Yeah, Jaden.
So like mathematically, what is happening when you factor something?
Yeah, so when you're factoring, you're undoing.
Okay, but like, what equations are we doing? Like, are we dividing or something?
So technically, we are dividing everything by a certain thing. So, so when we grouped the 2 together, and then we divided these first 2 by a negative C. And you divided these last 2 by a negative 4. And then you divided the entire first part and the entire second part by 2D minus 1, which leaves you with just those other parts. Yeah, great question, great question. So that's mathematically what's happening there is we're dividing to create multiplication. Now on number 3, is this in standard form already? Oh, that's nice. Okay, so we don't have to rearrange. So what's our first step?
Rearrange.
Not quite. Parentheses. Once again, I'm going to take that sign with the last one here. Now, on this one, it's not as big of a deal if I don't take the sign, because do you assume it's a positive 4n if you don't see a plus or minus sign? Yeah. Whereas on the other ones, the last two, you assume it's a positive, so we need to take the negative with it. But I am still going to get in the habit of just taking that sign every time, and knowing that in my head, that's not actually a multiplication right now. Now, what's going to be our GCF in those first two?
5n squared? No.
Okay, 5n squared is the GCF in the first one.
Go Abby, go Abby.
Now, what's still in the parentheses then? Okay, n plus 4. Very good. Now, do n and 4 have anything in common? No. Okay, so now we turn our attention to the second set of parentheses. 4n plus 16. Yep, good luck. What do they have in common?
4.
A positive 4. So we're going to take out a plus 4 because it's going to be a positive 4. So just like how we've been taking out a negative something, we're going to take out a positive 4 and pull that plus sign. Now, that doesn't change the signs pulling out a positive, because when you divide by a positive, does it change the sign of anything? No. Now, what are we left with in the parentheses?
N plus 4.
N and plus 4. Hey, wait, what do we notice here?
They're the same thing.
They're the same exact thing.
Would you look at that?
There we go. That's better now. All right. So, what am I going to do next? Who can describe to me what I'm going to do next? Okay, Eli.
The n plus 4 in front.
Okay, put the n plus 4 in front in a parenthesis.
Plus, and then 5n squared, and parentheses, plus 4n.
Yep, and there's actually no plus sign between those two parentheses now because this created that multiplication. Just like with our GCS before, we pulled out the GCF and put parentheses following. Okay, I'll put it away, please. Any questions on this one? Jocelyn, put it away, please. Thank you.
Vibration.
All right, number 4.
Okay, I have a question.
What's going on here? On number 4?
Okay.
Okay, well, let me get started on number 4 first. What's happening here on number 4? Same thing, but do we just see a couple different variables again? Okay, is this new to us now?
Yeah, but 7 is.
Yeah, but we're going to maybe have less in common here, okay? Is that kind of our question we're having, ladies?
Yeah.
No? What's your question, Emily?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think I'm
you're raising your hand.
Okay.
No, I
So,
know because I'm so
once
used to
we get-
raising my hand for like.
So once we get through the first step, and then continue, and then I'll.
All right, so what's our first step? Parentheses, group things together. And I'm going to take that sign with the third term, that negative. But no, in my head, it's not multiplication yet. So we're going. We're not there yet. Okay, first parenthesis, Jack. 2xy and 7x. What do they have in common? What's our common factor here? Nothing. They don't have any numbers in common. Do they have any variables in common? They have an x. Do they have any y's? No, one of them does, the other one doesn't. So if I take out an x there, thanks for the assist, Isaac, what are we left with in that first parenthesis?
2y plus 7.
2y plus 7. Now in the second parenthesis, negative 2y minus 7. Do 2y and 7 have anything in common at all? No, but they do have the negative. So what do we factor out, Courtney? A negative 1. Very good, very good. That's exactly right. We're just going to factor out a negative 1. So that means, well, excuse me, does that mean the numbers and variables change really at all in the parentheses? No, what does change in the parentheses? The signs. Okay, so it becomes a positive 2y plus 7. So is that the exact same thing as the first parenthesis here?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Abby, did that answer your question?
Yes, I was.
Gucci, okay. So now, let me see here. Brady, you want to help me out? Cool beans.
Same signs in the parentheses, the 2y plus 7.
Yep, so what do we do with those?
Put them in the front.
Okay, put that out in front. Very good. Now what?
And then x minus 1 in parentheses.
In parentheses as well. Very good. Now we created a multiplication from our addition and subtraction. Once again, guys, if you want to check your work here, distribute, so FOIL, and reorder, and you'll get the same exact thing if we did it correctly. Okay? Elijah. Yes, good luck. Any other questions on this one, guys? All right. On number 1, okay, on number 1, I want to highlight something. Number 1 is currently x to the third minus x squared plus 3x plus 3, correct?
Yeah.
That should be plus x squared. There should be 3 plus signs. Please make that change right now on number 1. Once you do that, you are good to go.